Homo Deus. So, Yuval Noah Harari is an Oxford educated Israeli public intellectual, historian, and a professor at the Department of History at Hebrew University in Jerusalem. Now, this guy is the author of the hugely popular bestseller Sapiens, A Brief History of Humankind. Now, in that book, the author writes about how we Homo sapiens prospered on this planet, aided by agricultural revolution, and how our progress was accelerated by scientific method, which allowed us humans to approach almost near mastery over our environment. How we became the top species on the planet. And hell, this book demanded a sequel about what he thought about the future of humanity. So hello everyone, my name is Dr. Amrik and I'm a radiologist per se, and today we're going to talk about the sequel to this book, Homo Deus, wherein we examine the possible consequences of a futuristic world in which we, the intelligent biological organisms, are surpassed by our own creations such as artificial intelligence, data algorithms, etc. And we'll also discuss about how maybe a lot of it is coming true, like how our all algorithms designed by us are using our data, and maybe they can be used against us. Well, not maybe, how they are used against us by manipulating our behavior with respect to voting in the Brexit and the Trump election, and a lot more. So this book, Deus argues that humanity will definitely progress in the future towards bliss, immortality, hell, even divinity. But the author says that progress is, bound to be unequal. Like some people will leap ahead while many more would be left far, far behind. Think about it. Like, what will happen to democracy when Google and Facebook will come to know about your likes and your political preferences better than you know them yourself, right? What will happen to a welfare state when computers, very efficient, algorithms will push humans out of the job market and will make us the massive new useless class? Will Silicon Valley end up producing new religions rather than just novel gadgets? We discuss all this and more in today's episode. So, let's get started. So, this spellbinding book has this simple but chilling idea, alright, that human nature might be transformed in the 21st century because intelligence is being separated from the consciousness or feelings. Per se, we are not going to build robots anytime soon that will have feelings like we have feelings, and that's what we call consciousness. But we have already built vast data processing algorithms and network that can know our feelings better than maybe even we know ourselves, and that's intelligence. For example, Google, the search engine, it doesn't care about how we talk to it. It doesn't have its own beliefs, it doesn't have its own desires. It won't feel hurt or by our behavior or by what we search. But you know what, it can process our behavior to predict what we want even before we know it ourselves. Try typing something in the search bar, and that very fact has the potential to change what it actually means to be human. Now, in the author's previous book, the global bestseller Sapiens, he showed us that the last 75 years of human history are only there to remind us that there's nothing special or essential about who we are. We are just an accident. Homo sapiens is just one possible way of being humans, an evolutionary stage like any other creature on the planet. And that book ended with the thought that the story of Homo sapiens could be coming to an end. We are likely at the height of our power, and maybe even we have reached its limit. Now, Homo Deus, this book makes good on that particular thought to explain how our unparalleled ability to control the world around us is turning us into something different, into something new. So, see, we as humans today have not only simply conquered nature, but we have also begun to defeat humanity's worst enemies. War is increasingly obsolete, famines are rare, we have reached this triumphs by building like ever so more complex networks. The problem is these networks treat human beings as just units of information. The evolutionary science teaches us that in one sense we as humans are maybe nothing more than data processing machines. We too are all algorithms, and by manipulating the data we consume we can exercise mastery over our fate. But the problem here is that there are algorithms which we have built who do it way more efficiently than we can. All right, so that's what the author means by uncoupling of intelligence and consciousness. The project of modernity was built on an idea that individual human being is the source of meaning as well as power. Let me explain what do I mean by that. It basically means that we individually are the ones who have the power to decide what happens to us. Like supposedly as voters we decide who will rule us, as consumers we decide what we will consume, or like as lovers we decide who we are supposed to spend our lives with, right? So but the problem is in today's modern world that is not true anymore. Okay, we are what gives these huge networks their power, and then these networks use our ideas of meaning to determine what will actually happen to us. So way too much of technical jargon, right? Let me explain it to you in very simple terms. You see, our personal data has basically become a commodity, okay, that is collected, analyzed, and then it is spit back at us in the form of targeted ads and messaging with the hope of changing our behavior. You can find a great example of it if you watch this documentary called The Big Hack. It's on Netflix, and I cannot recommend this shit enough. Okay, so the documentary explores how such tactics might have played a role in Trump's presidential election in 2016 in America. And the target here in the documentary is squarely on this political data firm by the name of Cambridge Analytica, and the firm's strategy here was to target voters whom it called persuadables. Basically persuadables were people who did not have any inherent strong political loyalty. Okay, so these persuadables were targeted in the important states which could swing the election, and these people were then bombarded with content which supposedly manufactured behavior change in them and made them vote for Trump. Now, Cambridge Analytica allegedly harvested information from the profiles of more than 50 million Facebook users. Imagine that. This documentary also tells us the story of the scandal and illustrates how the data mining structures and algorithms that are basically destroying our individual liberty and democratic society. The funny thing is, it's destroying it one Facebook like and meme at a time. Now, after watching The Great Hack, you will have a much better understanding of what data tracking, harvesting, and selling looks like, and how they can be used to form opinions against individuals, communities, and even nations. Okay, so at the height of its power, this company held up to 5,000 data points about each people in their database, which was about 50 million. Okay, so this information was used for a variety of purposes, and basically it was used to manipulate a certain cross section of people whom we previously labeled as persuadables. So you might think about it, how did this thousands of data points about every individual wind up in their databases? The thing is, we willingly gave it to them. Remember those seemingly innocent Facebook quizzes that you took to determine which Marvel superhero or Disney villain you were? Or whether you were an introvert, or some other goofy question which you couldn't wait to have answered so that you could share it with your friends online. Those little diversions asked very specific questions that were used to harvest data and probably even psychologically analyze you. And based on this and other information from Facebook posts and the friends with whom you associated on that platform, the data analysis tools used artificial intelligence and evaluations to create a startlingly accurate psychological profile of you. And using that collected data, Cambridge Analytica set out to create for example, fear or apathy whichever was required to achieve the results of the political parties that hired that political firm. So now thing is a little controversial, not just because it sees Brexit and the presidential campaign of Trump like as almost a sinister military grade level of psychological warfare against and very unsuspecting public, but because it also highlights how large groups of people can be very easily led to vote against their very own interests. And for example, I'll give an example for this. There is this very brief section in the documentary focusing on the Do So campaign in Trinidad and Tobago. So for the context, there's basically two main parties, one for the Indians and the another for the African Caribbeans there. And allegedly this Indian party hired Cambridge Analytica for their political campaign, and they flooded the social media with catchy graphics and slogans designed to foster apathy, like not caring to vote in the folks who would vote for the opposition, in this case the African Caribbean party. Okay, the Do So campaign, what it basically targeted was it made like cool not to vote at all. Okay, so what happened was that many young people got influenced and they did not. So according to this documentary, about 40% of the African Caribbean population between the age of 18 to 35 did not vote, whereas the same age population of Indians did vote, since basically their parents told them to. And this swung the vote share by an approximate 6% in the favor of the Indian party, and that was all that was required for them to win. Okay. You can also watch this movie called Brexit from HBO. It's centered around the story of Brexit, obviously, on the big brain of Dominic Cummings, played by the clever aplomb of the kings of clever aplomb, Benedict Cumberbatch. So he's like this very Sherlock Holmes sort of master, behind the scenes masterminds of the Vote for Leave campaign. So he's projected as this political anarchist, someone who just wanted to hack the political system and see what would come out of the chaos. And when you see the movie, you can very easily understand the link between the way Cummings weaponized fear and racism to the way it was used in 2006 election of Donald Trump, where people were basically bombarded with ads like demonizing immigrants, and false news and stories were like relentlessly circulating on the internet. So the data was basically used to come up with a campaign that played on people's fear. Okay, and it promised them a better future. So the Vote Leave, the slogan for the party that was campaigning for Britain to leave the EU, their campaign slogan was Take Back Control. Okay, so Take Back Control implied that leaving the EU was not some drastic change. Okay, it previously we had control, and it's just that you're attaching yourself to the EU, so you're losing control. Okay, so the slogan Take Back Control implied that leaving EU was basically a way to reversion of going back to like a better time which was there in the past. Okay, so remember the right now the entire slogan of the Make America Great Again by Trump is on the very similar line. It seems very similar to this, right? So the problem here is that in a way it's a modern horror story where the villain is Cambridge Analytica, yes, but also Facebook and the systems that let people get manipulated by this digital psychological clues they leave throughout their lives. And it's very terrifying because it's very true, right? So on the internet, like our personal data we give away for free is transformed into very precious commodity. Like the puppy photos people upload train machines to be smarter. The questions we ask Google uncover our very deepest prejudices, and our location histories tell investors about which stores we are buying the most from, which stores attract the highest amount of shoppers. Even seemingly benign activities like staying in and watching a movie generates like mountains of information, treasured, it's and basically it's like a treasure which will be scooped up by businesses of all kinds. Personal data in today's world is often compared to oil, and it powers today's most profitable corporations. Like look at it, the Google, the Amazon, the Facebook, just like fossil fuels energized the most profitable organizations of the past, right? But the problem is the consumers that the data is extracted from often know little or nothing about how much information is collected from them, who gets to look at this information, and like how much that information that is being collected from you is worth. Every day, like hundreds of companies you may not even know exist gather information about you, some of them very intimate information, and that information is then made to flow to academic researchers, hackers, law enforcement, foreign nations, hell, China, as well as the most common of them all, companies who are basically trying to sell you stuff. Okay. So, in this book, Homo Deus, the author forces the reader to think about the future that is fast approaching. Like, even though the book is about the future of mankind, it also highlights how the current scientific and technological advancements are going to progress. And it makes us question if that is really how we foresee our future. Through this book, the author warns us more than anything, right? He asks the philosophical question of how we wish to live, and is that where we are heading right now? This book shows us the road that might lead to the future rather than painting a very pretty picture of the future that awaits us. Now, in the beginning, this book basically describes like what are our human agendas. First, it's like what we put in effort in is to increase human life expectancy, and the other is to increase the feeling of happiness. The ultimate goal being turning the boring old Homo sapien into this modern, more elegant version, the Homo Deus. Okay, this is how is this to be achieved? Now, this is to be achieved by re-engineering our bodies and minds. Not getting old, and maybe even like avoiding death altogether and attaining like divinity. Now, the book presents various examples pointing out towards how technology first emerged as a means to help people matlab, who needed help, and then it went on to be used by anyone and everyone. For example, it gives the example of prosthetics, which were usually, if you were like missing a limb, and then people were using prosthetics. But right now, every other person is getting a breast implant, a penile implant, and then performance enhancing drugs. Previously, like testosterone is being used as a performance enhancing drug right now, and even other things like Viagra, plastic surgery, bionics, etc. Now, what the author wants us to think here is that he wants us to ponder upon this fact that technology can basically create a new class of human beings, and it can reinforce that divide between the people who have it and the people who don't, like the haves and have nots. Okay, now let's forget about this like machines for now, which we were talking about the algorithms and everything. Let's talk about another aspect of technology, which is like genetic engineering, bioengineering, right? So if you think about it, like just in the last 100 years, like it has bioengineering has allowed us to achieve a lot. We have created insulin. We have helped couples who couldn't conceive through in vitro fertilization techniques, and like we can right now even like target and rectify genetic mutations. But like currently, even technology is being used to figure out how to manipulate a mosquito's genotype so that they can no more transmit those diseases they can spread. And all this sounds very lovely, but in the long term picture, the picture gets darker. Okay, see, think about this. Okay, the technologies that are allowing us to make changes to our biological system would definitely not be cheap, right? Whether whether we want to remove a faulty gene, or like we want a hormone like tweaked. Supposedly we want more testosterone to be jacked all through our life, all right, and or like to grow taller, or we want to have some chromosomal aberrations removed. See, all of this won't come cheap. Okay, so the people who would be able to afford them, the elite, the creme de la creme, these people will be able to upgrade themselves to like biologically superior beings. Okay, and we, the general masses, simply won't be able to compete with these people. Now, this will create a real divide among the population, with like real biological hierarchies. Okay, and who can say like the people who have those capabilities, who can buy those capabilities, won't enslave the people who are less equipped. So again, this he puts in this thought in us, okay, like what kind of future we are heading towards. Like for example, the Kardashians have access to the best plastic surgeons in the world. Okay, no matter whichever Kylie makeup you buy, you cannot look like them. Even like any Marvel superhero, any Bollywood or Hollywood actor has access to the best nutritionists, trainers, hormones, supplements, and doctors whenever he wants to achieve that physical perfection on the celluloid. You cannot simply match that, right? So the author in this book also talks about humanism, religion, and modernism. Okay, to simplify that, see, humanism does not believe in the existence of heaven. Okay, it is more directed towards that we as humans have the power to create heaven on earth. Okay, humanism does not believe that like things like floods or plagues are due to wrath of God. Okay, because we believe that we can make advancements in technology through which we can eradicate floods and plagues. Okay, which we have been able to a certain extent right now. The modern like society in which we live in, it only cares about one thing, and that is growth. Growth enables progress, and progress enables success. All right, so in this book the author talks about three different possibilities for the future of humanism, which basically we follow right now. Okay, in one he says that liberalism may die out as technological advancements will grow and ultimately displace humans. Okay, eventually like the economic and military importance will die out and dataism will become the new religion. Dataism is the value of freedom of information, and it is spread across basically two disciplines here, like computer science and biology. Okay, so basically like what we as humans will place most important to the most importance towards in the future would be data. That's what like he writes here. Now humanism's fundamental principle is that it is like dependent upon human feelings. Okay, and that we use to make general essential decisions. Now these feelings may or may have not evolved through like millions of years. However, more often than not, like we become irrational because of our feelings and we take the wrong decisions. And this is where like dataism trumps everything. See, the algorithm does not have feelings to make it like it does not have feelings that will make it take a hasty decision which should be irrational or wrong. Like algorithms do not care about feelings, right? When they are taking decisions, they rely solely on data that is presented to them. So the author says that when dataism takes over, the humanist principle of relying on one's feeling would be done away with, and ultimately pure logic will reign. Okay, now our life experiences may be analyzed and advices would be given and decisions would be taken accordingly for us. Given the current trend, would it come as a surprise? Because we are giving away our data on the internet for free, and we already have Google predicting us like what would we want to search for. We have Amazon recommending us like what things you need to buy. Advertisements are being targeted at us individually through our data, and it should not like surprise anyone when it is said that the era of information is literally going to engulf every aspect of today's society. To summarize in the simplest possible way, like religion says listen to God, your one true savior. Humanism says listen to yourself, your heart, and science says listen to research, the data. But everything is fine till now. Okay, so yeah, the thing we have to think about is like what will happen, like what if when the data suggests that you have to do something that completely disregards basic human rights? What do we do then? So what the author predicts in this book that ultimately science and dataism is going to be the religion of the future. See, when it comes to machine run dystopian futures, basically we have seen it all. Hollywood has basically left no stone unturned to depict it. Okay, whether it was that movie Cyborg or even Matrix, the human beings eventually gave up and became slaves, serving their masters, their digital masters. And with the death of humanism, we'll be left with only two options. One would be what we know as techno-humanism, which will be the use of technology as a leverage for the sake of human relevance, and the other is of course dataism, which will prioritize basically algorithms above everything. Out of the two, like, one is in which we combine ourselves with the machines, in the other, well, every decision is basically taken on raw data. Dataism is the realistic choice, since human beings are nothing more than biological algorithms. The world of techno-humanism can be done away with, because if you are talking about a world dominated by artificial intelligence, we would have no relevance whatsoever anyway. Because you see, dataism places importance only on intelligence, not on the consequences, not on the consciousness, nothing. It's only intelligence. In fact, if there is a world ruled by algorithms, the concept of emotions, basic human rights, all of this will go futile. And the author believes that our treatment by our superior masters would be no different than the way how we treat animals today. So think about it, right? Your data knows us, and therefore data will own us. Think about Facebook, right? One of the studies actually says that Facebook knows us better than our significant other, owing to all the data we have fed it throughout the years, through interactions on the platform. And that is how powerful data is. And the problem is, its power is growing every single second. So that's it, guys, for today's episode. Hope you enjoyed today's podcast. And also, thank you for the positive feedback on the previous episodes. Trust me, it means a lot. If you are listening to this on Spotify or YouTube, please do follow or subscribe, so that the algorithm gets to know that and sends you to similar content instead of mindless entertainment. Okay, this is me, Amrik, signing off. I sincerely hope that you have a really productive day. Thank you.